So somewhere on social media or through some kind of random find on Google, you've discovered a brand new podcast that's all about Huntsville. Now, there's a decent chance you're thinking to yourself, okay, kind of cool idea. I might be interested to hear about the best city in Alabama every week, but what exactly is a podcast? Well, don't worry, you're not alone. So first, let me tell you a little bit about Huntsville Insider. Every week we're going to do two things. We're going to tell you about fun stuff to do in the city, and we're going to bring you somebody who has the inside scoop on the things that make Huntsville a great place to live and work. We put a few things out through social media, but we kind of bring it all together in a weekly podcast that's released every Wednesday evening. So let's talk about podcasts. Podcasts are for when you're on the go, and they're a great way to get information about virtually anything you care about. Think back with me to a time before iPhones. Seems like forever, I know, and it's kind of hard to remember. George Bush was president. We were sending the first troops to Iraq and Afghanistan. You could still watch new episodes of Friends every single week on NBC. People were listening to Afro Man sing about getting high, Cisco freak out about thongs, and Ricky Martin, I guess ironically, singing about how she bangs. They were doing this all on these amazing new devices that made your CD player completely obsolete. I'm talking about the precursor to the iPhone. It was Apple's iPod. iPods completely changed the way we listen to things. I went from being so proud of having a 10-disc CD changer in my car to putting every piece of music I owned on this amazing little device that fit into my pocket. It didn't even skip when I walked. That ability for people to carry so much music with them everywhere they went and listen to it anywhere at any time provided inspiration for people outside the music industry as well. Folks started putting together short, informational, radio-type programs for people to listen to on their iPods. Naturally, they called them podcasts. Today, there are thousands upon thousands of podcasts covering everything from alleged murders in Woodstock, Alabama to the history of Bulgaria. We've chosen to make a podcast all about Rocket City, USA, because we think it's a truly awesome place. Maybe you found our podcast on your computer and thought to yourself something like, yeah, this sounds cool, but I'm not really going to sit here for an hour and listen to this. I mean, it doesn't even have video with it. If you thought that, you're doing it wrong. Podcasts are for listening to on your way to work, at the gym, while you're cutting the grass, folding laundry. And to do that, you need them on your phone. To get them on your phone, you need one of two apps. Huntsville Insider can be found on Podbean or Apple Podcasts. If you have something besides an iPhone, you need the Podbean app. If you have an iPhone, then you need the Apple Podcast app. Download the best app for your phone, search for Huntsville Insider, then hit subscribe. It's that easy. Once you've done that, each new episode will automatically download on your phone when it's connected to Wi-Fi so it doesn't take huge chunks of your monthly data allowance. We release on Wednesday evenings because that'll get it on your phone by Thursday morning and give you 4 commutes to listen and make plans for your week before the weekend gets here. The great thing is, once you have those apps, you have a whole new world opened up to you. I mean, there are so many podcasts out there about things you care about, and you can listen to them at will. Real quick, I want to run down a few of my favorite podcasts to get you started. I start out every morning with NPR's Up First. They give you the day's news like they were just sitting right there at your coffee table, drinking coffee, talking. And more importantly, they do it in 10 minutes. Here's a quick preview.
So the CEO of Uber is out. He quit amid complaints of harassment and discrimination.
The company worked its way into American culture, but what's the resignation say about workplace culture? I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm David Green. This is Up First from NPR, your first word on the day's news. Also, last night, Democrats lost a hotly contested congressional race in the state of Georgia.
This is not the outcome any of us were hoping for, but this is the beginning of something much bigger than us.
What lessons will Democrats draw, and how much reassurance did Republicans get?
Also, lawmakers hold more hearings on Russia's election meddling. The focus now turns away from President Trump and possible obstruction of justice. What more can be learned about Russia? Stay with us, and we'll guide you through today's news.
Some podcasts tell stories. They have a specific beginning and end. S-Town is one of those podcasts. It drew me and pretty much everybody else in the country in for 7 one-hour-long episodes. Now, it's marked explicit, and believe me, it is. It gets pretty weird towards the end. S-Town is the story of an alleged murder in Woodstock, Alabama. It's told by a reporter from New York City who actually traveled to Alabama to let a guy named John B. McLemore rant and rant and rant about his love-hate relationship with his hometown.
I only learned about all this because years ago, an antique clock restorer contacted me, John B. McLemore, and asked me to help him solve a murder.
Something's happened. Something has absolutely happened in this town. There's just too much little crap for something not to have happened. And I'm about had enough of town and the things that goes on.
From Serial and This American Life, I'm Brian Reed. This is town.
Finally, there are podcasts where each episode is self-contained. That means you can listen to them in any order and not miss anything. You just pick one that sounds interesting and go for it. A favorite of mine is Stuff You Should Know. The title of each episode is some variation of how blank works. Here are just a few of the things that they've taken the time to tell us how they work. Nude beaches, frogs, the Secret Service, shrunken heads, barbecue, McCarthyism, nipples, disco, ketchup, whale strandings, beer, and why we can't find Amelia Earhart.
Welcome to Stuff You Should Know from HowStuffWorks.com.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Josh Clark, and there's Charles W. Chuck Bryant, and there's Jerry Rowland, and that makes this Stuff You Should Know, the podcast.
Yeah, who would have ever thought that we could do more than one podcast on fleas?
Had I thought about flea circuses, I would have thought that.
Yeah, we covered it a tiny little bit. I went back and looked just to make sure we weren't being too redundant.
Right.
And we just sort of mentioned it briefly, but how delightful to dig in even further.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no way that we really got into it because it's one of, like, the least documented aspects of popular culture I've ever come across, man. And there's so much misinformation, and you run across people who act like they know exactly what they're talking about, and then you do more research and you find out they really are wrong in a lot of it. It's really... It was crazy. It was a crazy research.
Yeah, and you go to web pages that are solid green with white letters.
Yeah. Seriously.
Turn back the clock to 1997.
Right. Punctuation? What's that?
Yeah, it was a little weird. But
yeah,
if people take us to task on the accuracy of this one, then
we'll be like you.
That's a quick rundown on podcast. I hope you learned something, and I hope even more you'll download the apps and take the plunge into this awesome world of knowledge and coolness.